Okay, here's your second video on synthetic division, and this is going through the practice problems so that you really understand how to do the synthetic division. So we are going to divide the following problems using synthetic division. Be sure to write the quotient in polynomial form and write the remainder if one exists. So that's what our directions are. So we'll start at letter A and we'll work our way through these. Feel free to stop the video at any time that I'm going too quickly. So we set up our L chart first. Again, what goes in here is the coefficients of each of these terms if they're in order. So this one has a highest term of x squared, so then you should have an x and an x to the 0 term, which we have all of those. So the coefficient here is 1, the next one is -7, and the last one is 10. Notice I give some spacing to these, don't put them right next to each other as you go. Notice also that the x's are never written into synthetic division. Since I'm dividing by x minus 5, I'm going to put a 5, a positive 5 out here because the x value of this would be 5. Okay, bring the 1 down, multiply the 1 by the 5, and that goes over here. You add these together, that's -2. You multiply the -2 by the 5, and that's -10. That goes here. And you add these together, that's 0. So that's the pattern that I showed you earlier. You add to here, you multiply and get this number. You add these, you get this number, multiply and get this number, add and get that number. So that's the pattern that you should see, and it's going to keep going. If you remember from the first video, I did a lot more work with that. This is all of the work that you usually will do. This last number is the remainder. I always suggest that you box it in so that you see that it's a separate thing, okay? So that's my remainder. That means this is my x0 term, which again, you're not going to write an x to the 0 term, but that's the idea, and this is my x to the first term. So my answer to this question is it's x minus 2, because 1x to the first is just x, -2x to the 0 is just -2, so it's x minus 2. There is no remainder. So this is my final answer for that problem. If I divide this one out, again, I'm going to make my L chart, make it a little bit longer this time because there's 4 terms. Okay, I see an x to the 4th, an x to the 3rd. I need an x to the 2nd term in here, so that's going to be a 0x to the 2nd since there isn't one. There's an x term and there's an x0 term. So those are all of my terms that I need. So I'm going to put my coefficient, leading coefficient here is 1, and it's a -5. Don't forget that 0. This is what most people are going to forget, is you have to go in order. There's a 4 for the x term, and there's a -17 for the x to the 0 term. So that's everything you need out there. We're still dividing by x minus 5, so I put a 5 out front. Follow the pattern. Add going down, so 1 plus nothing is 1. 1 times 5 is 5. That goes up and to the side. Add going down, that's 0. 0 times 5 is 0. This is where it gets fun. 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 times 5 is still 0. 4 plus 0 is 4. 4 times 5 is 20. And 20 plus -17 is 3. Again, this is my remainder. That is the pattern you will follow for each of these. So hopefully you've gotten that figured out and you're following that pattern. Now, working my way backwards, if this is my remainder, this is my x to the 0 term, this is my x to the 1 term, this is my x to the 2 term, and this is my x to the 3 term. So if I'm going to write this answer out, I have a 1x to the 3rd, which is x to the 3rd, no x squareds, no x to the first, and 4x to the 0s. Again, you don't write the x to the 0, so this is just a plus 4 with a remainder that is 3. And that's how we're going to write our remainders for now. So leave your remainder just as a number there or whatever's left over. Okay. Moving on, letter C here. So we have 2x to the 3rd minus 7x squared minus x minus 12 divided by x minus 4. So I'm going to make my L chart. I'm going to fill it in here. I have a 2x to the 3rd, I have an x squared, I have an x to the 1st, and x to the 0. So no extra ones that I need to put in there. The 2 goes first, the -7, the -1, and the -12. X minus 4 means I am going to divide by positive 4 out here. So 2 comes down as a 2. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 minus 7 is 1. 1 times 4 is 4. 4 minus 1 is 3. 3 times 4 is 12. And -12 and 12 makes 0. We like these remainders of 0. You're going to see in future lessons why we have that 0 there, but right now we're just working on the synthetic division. Again, working my way backwards. This is my x to the 0 term, this is my x to the first term, and this is my x to the second term. So to write my answer here, I'm going to get a 2x squared. 1x to the first is just x, so plus x, and 3x to the 0. Again, you're not going to write the x to the 0, so this is plus 3. No remainder here, so this is my answer, 2x squared plus x plus 3, and you're done there. Again, we keep moving on. Now, this one is not in standard form, so you have to be really careful. You either write it in standard form or you at least have to, as you put it into the L chart, put it into standard form. So I see an x to the third, so that coefficient is going first. Then it would be the x to the squared coefficient, so that's a 7. Then it's the x to the first, so that's this one here, so that's the 4. And then the x to the 0, which is the -1 here. No zeros that need to take places like we had up here, so we have all of our terms. X plus 1 means I'm putting a -1 out here. Here's our first negative outside. And then we're still going to do the same pattern. So bring the 2 down. 2 times -1 is -2. Add these together, you get 5. 5 times -1 is -5. 4 plus -5 is -1. -1 times -1 is +1. And -1 plus 1 is 0. Again, we like these 0 remainders. You're going to see those most of the time. So we have that. We work our way backwards. This is my x to the 0. This is my x to the first. And this is my x to the second term. So writing it out, we work left to right here. My answer is 2x squared plus, that is a 5x again to the first. We don't have to write that. So 5x. And x to the 0, we don't write this. We just write the number. So -1, no remainder. So that is my answer when I divide by x plus 1 there. So that's what I get. Okay, finishing this up. We've got letter E and letter F here that you can see. So we've got some fractions to deal with here. That's okay. These are the ones where technically we were dividing possibly by a, in this case, a 2x minus 1 and how you do it. But you can divide with fractions. We're going to show you that here. So I'm going to set up my L chart, get my coefficients in first. So this is the easier part. Put the 1 from the x to the fourth. Then I'm going to make my way down. So x to the third is a 2. X to the second is a -5/4. And x to the first is 2, and x to the 0 is -1, with a +1/2 out front. So those are all of my terms here. So we got to use fractions, but you can do the same thing. Bring the 1 down. 1 times 1/2 is still 1/2. When you're adding these together, you can think of this 2 as 4 halves if you want to, if that helps. So 4 halves plus 1/2 is 5 halves. 5 halves times 1/2. When you multiply fractions, multiply the tops, multiply the bottom. So tops is 5, bottom is 4. So we get 5/4. It's kind of nice that those match up. So add those together, you get 0. 0 times 1/2 is still 0. 2 plus 0 is 2. 2 times 1/2. So this is a 2 over 1 if you need to do that. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 1 is 2. So 2 over 2 is going to be 1. And -1 plus 1 is 0. So we still got a 0 remainder. Not as bad as you think. We got to do a little bit with fractions there, but not terrible. Work your way backwards. This is my x to the 0 term, my x to the first term, my x to the second term, and my x to the third term. So my answer here is x to the third. I can get rid of that 1, plus a 5 halves x squared. We don't have to write this 0x to the first term. We don't write the x 0, so just plus 2. Remainder is 0, so we leave that off. And so there is my answer. Last but not least, okay, it looks like we're going to be adding in some 0 terms here. Okay, so we have to work with that. So we have an x to the fourth term. So we got to make our L chart, put the 3 in there. So that's my highest exponent. X to the third is next. That's a 2. We don't have an x squared, so I fill it in with a 0. We don't even have an x term. I fill in another 0. And then we have an x to the 0 term here as -5. So check this out again, and you can check every other one with it. But if you have an x to the fourth, you're going to have one more term than you have exponent there. So the degree is 4, so you're going to have 5 terms through here. We're dividing by a -4 in this case. So bring the 3 down, we get a 3. 3 times -4 is -12. 2 plus -12 is -10. -10 times -4 is 40. Add those together, you still get 40. Okay, we're going to get into some larger numbers here. 40 times -4 is -160. -160 plus 0 is still -160. Got to multiply here. -160 times -4. Anybody want to beat me here? Okay, it's going to be 640. A positive 640. So 640 minus 5 is a 635. Just so you know, I already had this one written down, so I didn't do that in my head yet. Okay, there's my remainder right there, a big remainder. That doesn't mean you did it wrong. That just means that it didn't divide very well. Okay, so there's my remainder. This is my x to the 0 term. This is my x to the 1 term, my x to the 2 term, and my x to the 3 term. Okay, so writing my answer is 3x to the third minus 10x squared plus 40x minus, again, you don't write the x to the 0, so 160, with a remainder of 635. So that is my answer to this problem here. Okay. If you have any questions or you want to go back through the video, feel free to rewind the video and go back through it. But to finish this off, we had a little extension here with example 5. Find the missing dimensions for each of the following figures. You're given an area and you're given a rectangle here, so you know that length times width equals area for a rectangle. Or we know that if we can take the area and we can divide by the width, then we can find the length, which is what we're needing here. So if we want to divide this by width, we can get that the length is the area divided by the width. So this is where our long division is going to come into play. We're taking this and dividing by this right here. So setting up my L chart, I'm going to have a 1, a 10, and a 21. Those are coming from the area. And then a -3 out here from the width, and then that'll help us find our length here. So bring the 1 down. 1 times -3 is -3. Add those together is 7. 7 times -3 is -21. And add those together, you get 0. Now, in these real-life problems, if you get a remainder, you've got more of an issue. So we don't have a remainder here, so we can solve this one. So the 7 is my x to the 0 term. This is my x to the first term. So this is an answer of 1x to the first is just x. 7x to the 0 is just 7. So x plus 7 is my answer for the dimensions here. We don't know an exact value. We just know the dimension is x plus 7 in that case. We come over to this volume one. So a cubic problem, and how we do this is I know that volume is equal to, in a rectangular prism, here we have length times width times height. If I can divide by any of these, I can get one of them by themselves. So it looks like this might be maybe the width, I don't know, the length, whatever you want to say, but we can divide by the height, we can divide by the width, and we can solve for the length. So this is going to get a little bit tricky, but we're going to do two synthetic divisions on top of each other. So see if you can follow this. I'm going to start with my L chart with my volume. So here's my volume here. I put in a 2, a -11, a 10, and an 8. I didn't skip any terms there, so we're good with that one. And I'm going to just pick one to divide by. So I'm going to choose this one to go first. Okay, so I'm going to put a 4 out front. Okay, do your division. 2, take it times the 4 is 8. Add those together is -3. Multiply those as -12. Add those together is -2. Multiply those as -8, and we get a 0. Again, this is a good thing because that means that we've done this correctly. Now, I said that this is going to be an answer of x to the 0, x to the first, and x to the second. But I said that we were going to have to divide again, so we have to divide this one as well. We can actually just do another long division on top of this and make a second L chart here. And those are our numbers right there that we can deal with. So I'm going to divide this one by a +2. So bring the 2 down. 2 times 2 is 4. -3 plus 4 is 1. 1 times 2 is 2. And -2 and 2 makes 0. And so what I just did is I divided, and I knew I had to divide again, so why not just do your synthetic division on top of it? Again, this is your x to the 0 and your x to the first term. So what's left over for that last length is a 2x plus a 1. Again, that's an x to the 0, so you don't write that down. Is a 2x plus 1 for that other dimension. Okay, good luck with this. If you need to watch any of these videos again, they're all available to you.